Hi, today we're going to work with an illustration and we're going to prepare it for screen printing, in this case on a t-shirt. And we're going to want to use one color of ink, black, on a light colored t-shirt. So let's see how we might go about that. If you're familiar with illustrations, I chose this particular one. These artist figures, if you've ever taken an art class, life drawing or something, you've probably seen these little guys. You can pose them however you want, so it helps you work up a sketch. And I chose this one because this has a wide range of tones, from solid black here on the outline and on this guy's head to no black at all, just white, and everything in between. So of course we're going to want to do a halftone of this in order to print it in black ink. Now you might just get away with doing a halftone, ripping it through whatever rip you have, or if you don't have a rip, you can use a post. It's hard for me to say a postscript file and ghost view. That's the way I do mine. It's a no cost way of creating halftones and printing them out. This is CorelDraw. I don't always show my toolbars, but in this case I am showing them because we're going to be using a lot of different tools. So where was I? You may get away with just printing this out as a halftone. You might be pleased with that. I like to work a little bit harder and see if I can create a halftone that will make it easier for me to print, and will also result in a better quality print that will make my customer happier, and that's good for both of us. So the first thing I want to do is convert this. It's an RGB bitmap, and almost all the bitmaps you're going to get, either from the internet or if your customer sends one to you, they're all going to be RGB because that's what most people use. They're not printers, and they don't have any reason to have a grayscale bitmap, but we want that because that will give us the truest representation when we print out the halftone. So it looks like grayscale, but it's an RGB, and the monitor is displaying it, of course, in RGB. So I'll go up here to bitmap and I'm going to convert it to a grayscale. The original is 200 dpi. It's at a big size, and that should be fine for screen printing. You may personally prefer a higher resolution, and if your original allows for that, feel free to make it whatever resolution you like to work with. I'm going to keep it at 200 dpi, and this is important here, transparent background. We want to select that. I'm going to show you why in a little while. It's not going to make any difference for printing, but it's going to come into play later because we're also going to create a proof for our customer to look at. Now that it's a grayscale bitmap, I'm going to work with it a little bit, and the reason I'm going to do that is two reasons. One, I want to adjust for dot gain. If you have ever printed a halftone, you may have experienced dot gain, which means in the case of screen printing, you give it a squeegee stroke and it's too light. You give it another squeegee stroke, it darkens it. You give another one, it darkens it more, because each time you're forcing a little bit more ink through your mesh, and these dark areas may fill in. You might be disappointed to see that this starts looking kind of muddy and filled in the darker areas. So most of the time when I have a dark drawing like this, I like to lighten it up a little bit. You don't want to change the quality of the illustration, but you also want to make it easier to print, and you want some flexibility on press, especially if you're running a manual press. You can usually darken a halftone on press by giving it an extra stroke, but if it's printing too dark, there's nothing you can do about it. You have to start over. You can't lighten a halftone, obviously. Once it's on there, it's on there. So I like to make it a little lighter on the original than I want it to print, because I can always darken it up later on press. I also want these dark blacks, this outline, this part of his head, I want that to print rich, solid black, not a halftone. I haven't worked with a whole lot of different commercial rips, but I know the way I print my halftones, if I just did this straight as a single image, there would be a tiny white dot because it's showing this as a gray, and that's the way the computer sees it. And so as a result, there's going to be a tiny white dot, maybe a 90% black instead of a solid black, and that gives it a sort of a fuzzy look that I don't care for. I want these parts to print solid 100% black, and I don't want to make an extra screen to do that. I want this all on one screen to make it faster and easier for me. So to accomplish that, I'm going to copy this, Control C on my keyboard, and I'm going to paste it. That's Control V for a shortcut. And now there are two, one on top of the other, and I'm going to work with this top one here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go up here to Effects, Adjust. I'm going to pull up my Tone Curve tool, and that brings that up. I'll get it out of your way so we can see what we're doing. And normally I like this sharp curve. That seems to always give me the results I want. I occasionally use the smooth curve when I want to generally lighten an entire photograph. There are different reasons for using different curve styles, but I usually use the sharp curve, and that's what I'm going to use now. So my objective here is to get rid of all the medium grays and the darker grays and the lighter grays, and only have this dark black on this particular, on this top image. So I'm going to achieve that by coming down here on my black side and coming way up on my white side. And I'll hit preview and we'll see what we did. Okay, and that's pretty much what I had in mind. You can adjust this a little bit more. I might not want this part to print solid, so I might give it a little bit more white. And that's pretty much what I wanted. And so, as you can see, you can adjust this as many times as you want to get it to look the way you want it to look. So now that'll print solid. And the way I'm going to work with it is I'm going to, it'll print solid once I convert it again. And I'm going to convert it to a monochrome bitmap, which is called black and white in CorelDraw. And it's really not necessarily black and white. If you've worked with these before, you know that it can be any color you want for the image and any color you want for the background. In this case, I'm going to leave the image as black. I'm doing that with a right click on my mouse on my color palette, which you can't see because it's off screen. I'm going to left click on the no fill on my color palette. That makes it transparent. So now it looks like we're back to the original, but there's actually this monochrome on top of the grayscale. And now I'm going to work a little bit with the grayscale, so I'll dig for it by pushing Alt and my mouse. And there it is, and I'll bring it to the front. So now we're back to what we had before, the monochromes in the back, just for now. And this is where we're going to deal with the potential for dot gain. And dot gain is going to happen in these dark areas. So I actually want these lighter areas to stay about how they are now, because that'll print fine. But I want to lighten up, especially right here, left leg, and here where it's really dark. I want that to be a little bit lighter. So I'll go up here once again to my Effects, Adjust, pull up my Tone Curve tool. I'll get that out of your way. And I'll keep it smooth this time, a smooth curve versus a sharp curve. And you won't notice a whole lot of difference, but sometimes I think the smooth one gives you a little bit more of, preserves a little bit more of the subtle curves between the different shades. And for this, that's what I'm going to do. And as I said, I want that black to be a little lighter, and I don't want the white to be lighter, so I'm going to do the curve like this so it keeps, hopefully keeps the light areas where they are and lightens up the darks. We'll see how that looks. And that's about what I had in mind. Now this will make it much easier to print. I can always darken it up so it looks like the original, but now I'm not going to have to worry as much about these dark areas filling in, and I'm not going to lose my whites either because I kept them the same on this end. You'll get used to your press and your screens, your printing style, and you'll learn about how light and how dark you want to make your halftones. So this is sort of a learning process. It's more of an art than a science. Okay. Now that I've done that, I'm going to send this grayscale to the back again. And you can't really tell I did anything, but once again that monochrome solid black one is on top of it. So when the RIP interprets this, it's going to see that part as solid black and it's not going to give it a halftone dot, whereas it might if you don't do that. Okay, so this is ready to RIP or to, as I said earlier, output to a PostScript file. Hard for me to say. So you can at this point add whatever graphics you want. To complete your design, and this is ready to work with. But we're going to do one more thing, and that's to create a proof that your customer can look at to see what it's going to look like when it's done. That's important because you don't want her to see it and say that's not really what I had in mind, and you've already printed 100 shirts. So let's show a proof to the customer. I'll plan to show her a proof on a lime green t-shirt. So here's my shirt. I'll send that to the back. And here's what we were talking about earlier. It's not going to work like this. We need that background to be transparent so that it looks more like it's going to look on the shirt. It's not obviously not going to print with a white box like this. So as you may recall, the monochrome is already transparent. You can see the shirt through that. And what I want to do is work with the grayscale. So I will select the grayscale and then I'll click Edit Bitmap. Now that opens up my other program, Corel Photo Paint. What I like about CorelDraw is you can go back and forth between Photo Paint and Draw as many times as you want. Your image won't move, it won't change size, you won't have any trouble. It'll stay exactly where it is, and that's what I like about using this program. And the other thing I like about it is, as you've already seen, you can do a lot of your bitmap editing right in Draw without going to Photo Paint. Now you can't do airbrushing and you can't do smudging or anything like that. You can't add graphics, but you can do a lot of the adjustments in Draw without going to Photo Paint. But this is Photo Paint. So I have a different set of toolbars here, and the one I'm looking for is this one here. This menu, this one says interactive drop shadow tool, but I'm not going to use that. I'm going to go to this little wine glass with a yellow sun, and that's the color transparent, that's the color transparency tool. And what that does is when you click on an area of your graphic, it'll change that part of the graphic to transparent. So in this case it's going to see white, and that gets rid of all my white. And that checkerboard pattern means that you're looking at the background through the JPEG. And as you can see, I haven't lost any of my shading. So now I don't have to save this. I do, but all I have to do is get out of this program. It'll ask if I want to save it. Yes, I do. And there goes the background. So I'll resize this just to get it on this shirt. Once again, this is only for the customer. We've already ostensibly saved our original and it's ready to print out. This is just to show your customer. So I'll get it to sort of fit on there, and I'll move this over in the middle, and we'll see how that looks. That doesn't look that good, does it? We can see the grays, but we also see some white in the illustration. and we're not going to use any white ink. This is only going to print in black. So what's showing up as white is actually going to want to be the green part of the shirt showing through, not white. We're not doing an underbase. That just would make this one look worse. We want that to be the green of the shirt. So I'm going to get my grayscale bitmap, which once again is below my monochrome. I can actually, for this step, I can just delete that monochrome. That's not doing me any good. This is just, once again, for the customer to look at. And I'm going to convert this back to a RGB, and that will allow me to add some color to it. So rather than just being gray and white and black, it will be whatever color I want. Then I'll go up here to Effects, Adjust, Replace Colors. And once again, I'm still in Draw. We can do this without having to go to Photo Paint. So I'll get this out of the way so we can see our image. And we've got old color and new color, and it's going to interpret all the white and change it to black. However, I don't want it to change it to black. I want it to be green. So I'll take my little eyedropper here, come over here, and let's look at this. There's this dark green here where the shadow is, and I don't want that. I want this lighter green, like where the illustration is. And of course, it's going to be uniform, but this is only for the customer to look at, so this isn't going to look perfect. But let's pick this color here. Now you can see my new color is going to be that light green, and all these are going to go to where they think they should be. This is my hue, saturation, and lightness. Real quickly, hue is you can study all this on your own, but hue is the color itself. So this will go from red on one side to, I guess, blue on the other side, red, green, blue. And as you adjust this, it'll get redder or bluer depending on what you're doing. But I'm going to leave that there because I like it where it is, green, light green. Basically, saturation refers to the intensity of the color. If I go this way, it'll get greener. If I go this way, it'll get grayer. And lightness, of course, is self-explanatory. It's how light the color is going to be. So as you go higher on the scale, it kind of adds RGB, white light, to the image so it appears whiter. So this is all defaulted to where it wants to be. We'll leave range where it is. And let's preview that to see what it looks like. It looks better than it did, but I still think these greens look a little bit unrealistic. So I'm not going to stay with the defaults. I'm going to go up here to saturation. There's too much green in here. I'm just going to back it off a little bit, and we'll preview it as we go along, because I want to get rid of some of the green, and I want to make it look like it's black with green underneath. And then lightness, I'm going to go up just a little bit. Now I'm working with the green. This isn't changing my black areas. Green being the old color of white. And I kind of like that. We're not losing much of our highlight. Maybe I like that a little more. Okay, I'm going to leave it at that because you see how all that works, and you can experiment and get it to look just the way you want. You're not going to always get it perfect. You can explain to your customer that this is a representation of what it's going to look like on the shirt, but you're going to print it with a halftone. It's not going to be actual gray ink. If the customer doesn't know what a halftone is, you can tell them that if they look at a newspaper photograph, they will see that it's not printed with shades of gray ink. It's all printed with black ink, and it's made up of thousands of tiny dots. So they're probably familiar with that, and that'll give them an idea of what a halftone is going to look like. Most customers are going to be pleased with a halftone on the shirt. So this is what I'm going to show my customer, and she'll be able to see what her shirts are going to look like. She can tell me if she likes the design, if she wants it darker, lighter, whatever. And there are a few steps you could take to make this look a little bit more realistic if it's for an advertisement. Of course, you can work with your image harder than I did. I just did this quickly. You might want to get it just perfect if you can. You can also do a technique where you add some of these shadows in a transparent JPEG on top of this image to get it to look a little bit more real. And there are some pretty good videos on how to do that, but that's a whole different topic. We're not going to take that extra step, because this looks good enough to show the customer. She knows it's a facsimile, and this is what she can basically expect our print to look like. So try some of these techniques, experiment with these controls. We went through a lot of different things. There are different things that you can experiment with. You might want to also learn more about color, hue, saturation, and lightness with those controls we just used. It's a very interesting topic. You can go on forever, and there's a lot to research. So anyway, there's a lot for you to work with today, and I hope your next project goes well.